Hi everyone, and welcome to the second Deep Field podcast with me, Nikola Tosic. So first I want to start off with a little housekeeping. And I had a very peaceful couple of months recently in which I had time to make a couple of videos. I think you had a chance to see them. They were about solving exams at the Faculty of Civil Engineering. And I really enjoyed making them, and I think the reception was also good and will be even better when the term comes around. So actually I was busy with other things and didn't have so much time to think about the podcast, and I was away from Belgrade for 2 months, so even some people maybe that I would have had the chance to interview, I didn't. So it didn't occur to me what were my immediate plans for it, but actually I got help from a friend to restart it. And before we start with today's podcast, I want to make a brief review of the previous one, how I perceived it, how I think the reception was from people. So as I thought, the audience was probably just my immediate surroundings and the people I know, which is okay for me, but also there were some surprises in reactions I got from people, and it reached probably some people that I didn't expect it to reach, so that was very interesting. Even though I'm not promoting this channel or anything else, I think still it was interesting to see how that evolved. My personal impression from my own performance and the way I felt was I wasn't completely happy how it went, and I think it's just because it was the first one. I was too self-conscious the whole time. I was just thinking about, is the audio recording, are we going through all the noted topics, and is the conversation progressing smoothly, and was very distracted. So yeah, even though I got positive feedback, for me personally, it didn't go exactly the way I thought it would. But I have high hopes for this second one, because the idea for it actually came from my guest on the previous podcast, Aleksandar Stojanović. You can see our previous podcast on the link in the description. And if you watched that previous podcast, and if you haven't, I'm encouraging you to do so. He is a PhD student at the University of Turin at the Collegio Carlo, Alberto, and he is doing a PhD in the economics of law. And I think he liked our podcast very much the last time around, so he asked me when are we going to do another one, and came up with the idea for this second one. So tonight again I'm joined by Aleksandar Stojanović on the second Deep Field podcast with the provisional title of, I think it's Running the Hedonic Treadmill. So we're going to talk about several points that Aleksandar wants to raise. So I'm actually going to hand the guidance of this podcast to him, and I'll sit back and enjoy the ride. And I hope you will too. And now I give you Aleksandar Stojanović.
Hi guys. Hi everyone. Yeah, I'm a big fan not only of our last podcast, but of the whole idea of two of us spending time and talking about things, because it's always this type of thing where I imagine how it went 3,000 years ago or something like that, when any kind of this life began, and when two people would come down and for a moment stop in their daily routines and everything. And their also intellectual work, which is quite specified and dealing with issues that might not be of immediate concern to everyone else, and start talking about generally trying to think about life at the moment in which we find ourselves from at the moment. And I think this is a quite of kind of, I would say, a praise of liberty, a kind of liturgical type of communication, which is not definitely not religious in a sense of belonging to a religion, but quite spiritual for me always. And so I'm kind of this one is not going to be as prepared and as well made as the previous one, just to do a disclaimer, because it's I'm quite aware of the differences between the two of us.
I don't know how many references we're gonna cite this time.
Yeah, this time no references, and maybe it's good also to say, okay, but no references. What do we talk about, and what do we want to kind of think about together for a moment? and share. And I thought about hedonic treadmill, which is one of the things we generally did talk about so many times in so many different ways.
And I think it came up with the New Optimism podcast because it is kind of the issue also there. So yeah. But please continue.
I mean, luckily for you, being someone who is basically doing a research that most would find very technical and very natural and science oriented, but you did also want to discuss, besides the side of things, like objective side of things you wanted to discuss also the feelings, because you wanted to discuss New Optimism as a kind of, optimism, as a feeling, as an attitude, as something more than just, few facts that some might consider or not consider.
Because I think we all go through our days. I mean, when we look in retrospect to some periods of time, we always feel them colored in a certain way, you know, with a certain prevailing mood. So, and this is kind of the,
this was the mood that you picked up on.
Yeah.
So basically, I thought
do we need to define the hedonic treadmill?
Yeah, just let me try it in 2 words, but really in 2 words. So the whole thing, I mean, the point of the idea is quite simple, but not quite appealing in some sense. There is this proportion of pleasure and pain, or better, of satisfaction and dissatisfaction that you go through in your daily life, and you can't get over certain proportion. At some point, whatever you do, either in the sense of, consuming things and buying things, or in the sense of working on yourself and trying to be a better person, to live in a more, wiser way, if that's something that we share, and I think we do. But there is a certain proportion, at least on that level, on the level of the sensual level of the whole thing, where there is a proportion over which you can't go. And
so it is basically just if I can recapitulate it, as I understand it, the hedonic treadmill is the tendency of happiness levels to always return to some basic level. After some event that raised your happiness, you will always have a certain baseline.
Over a long run, or whatever, however we want to define a period, there is a level of happiness that is generally achieved, and that's it, basically.
In the sense, getting a new Ferrari tomorrow, in 1 year having it.
Yeah, I think the one question that could be always asked, and maybe we can also talk about it, but it's not the primary concern, is what is measured in terms of what is this that is proportionate, and what maybe is it a good measure, whether we can even try to measure something like that or whatever. I mean, I'm always up for all those questions in general, but this time I don't want to do that. I want to say, and then just another last disclaimer in the world. In this story is that I don't think this is, of course, a first world question. It's a question which 2 guys ask themselves in a position of privilege, because of course, if we think about levels of satisfaction, of pain, of pleasure, we can see that many people, just for the reason that they are existing in a different place in general, or at a different position in society, they can't, it's not a problem for them that there is certain limit that can be reached, but there is so much pain and dissatisfaction that it's not even, about what at certain point you achieved. You don't get the daily bread, or you don't get, to try to be more spiritual and wise in your life, because you can't find time for that. And then, it's another thing. But I would say, even if it's a question of the first world, in a sense, and we should also, as we did last time, think about always globally about this issue, and we did also do that when we talked about the optimism. It's I think it's still question worth asking.
But what is?
So the question, and that's the question, for you. There are many questions, but one. Just being a person who believes in the whole story of living wiser, no? Of trying to live to improve. And that involves certain intellectual activity. And that also involves effort, no? in the end. That's something that you concentrate on, and I would say this is true of both of us. What do you feel? What do you think when you take into consideration the existence of the treadmill and the idea that on a certain level, whatever you do,
yeah,
there is a limit on a level at which you might or might not hope to get further on, but maybe also I'm saying I feel in that way when I'm trying to believe in living morally and wisely. That the point is that still in some way you want to achieve some kind of happiness that might not be really achievable, in a sense that there is this level of there is a limit to that. And when you think about the fact that there is a limit and you want to improve, I mean, that's like the initial thing. Like, how do you feel about that?
Okay, so if I can repeat the question in my words, it would be in the sense that, how do I look at achieving goals in light of the hedonic treadmill?
Yeah. And how, or even believing in the fact that you try to be a better person. And then by better person, I mean to eat a better diet, finally. To like, not do things that you shouldn't be doing because it's kind of making you go back or like change your habits.
Like, what's the point and where's your motivation?
Yeah, why do you? I mean, taking into consideration that there is it's two questions.
Like, to answer the point about like eating healthy, I mean, you can look at it in the way like, okay, maybe I will be like less healthy, eating some less happy, eating some plants, and maybe this will cause me less happiness than eating chocolate and so on. But eating more healthy, you have to take into consideration like the amount of life that you will be allowed enjoying this baseline happiness. So if you would, like, mathematically speaking, integrate like over a longer lifespan, then the net positive is bigger in that sense speaking. So that can be like one justification of why to do it.
Yeah, net positive gets bigger.
That's one point. But as you were talking, like the ideas that I were getting in my head was like, why get the PhD, which we're both pursuing, or why have a family, or why get some job when you will regress to some baseline happiness that will probably be the same. I mean, every day waking up with or without children, a family, or PhD, you will feel like some general mood similar. My idea as I was listening to that was like, okay, my subjective mood will be pretty much maybe similar as it is now, or maybe not, but let's say that it is. Like, at least if I have those things, like at least I'm enjoying them, or no, at least I'm on this baseline happiness, which is a subjective thing, having those objective things completed. Like, somehow that is also a value for me. Like, for me, there is some value in having them, whether they like cause this. So, like level upping in
precisely
in fantasy role playing. Like, you are, a second
your productivity rises, no?
Maybe
overall,
this kind of thing. That was my idea listening to that, like having these concrete things happen, having them, and from that level enjoying this baseline happiness, which is, let's say, the same as without them, but then you should ask, like, this now brings me to kind of cognitive dissonance thing, which is in a way like if you have two conflicting feelings that you cannot have, like your psyche, it cannot have two conflicting feelings, so it will try to rationalize one of them to fit the other. So, like, the example is people who kill someone in a car accident, then go to jail. They have a feeling of themselves being a normal person, and at the same time a conflicting feeling of them having killed someone, so they cannot reconciliate those two feelings. So in time what you get with these people is like the rationalization. Well, it wasn't really my fault. Well, look at the other people, what they done, and they didn't go to jail, and this kind of thing. So I think there is in this hedonic treadmill somehow hidden also this like how much is it this rationalization and cognitive dissonance, And is it different achieving some things to which we attach value and from with them enjoying the baseline happiness, or without them? This kind of nihilistic view where, well, I will always have the baseline happiness. Why should I do this?
Why should I care?
Is there any point in chasing some things that we attach value to?
Yeah, precisely. I mean, that's what I'm like trying to ponder upon, and I kind of, I just find it like a thought that occurs in my mind on a reflected level of thinking, like that's something I think about when I think about how I even, behave and what I try to do and how I try to motivate myself and how I try to, go on.
Or how much is it like this delayed happiness thing? This
what would be that?
In the sense that I'm chasing the PhD to enjoy some future gratification.
Yeah, precisely. Also, this kind of if you say, okay, maybe all of our goals and plans and projects finally are these what you just said, no? Are these kind of trying to push further away the moment at which the satisfaction will be reached, even though this satisfaction can't even be reached. No?
Yeah, but I mean, it's in
don't
this
you,
sense.
Don't you see? I mean, what's bothering about does it bother you
the hedonic treadmill?
Yeah. No, I'm not saying it bothers me in the sense of so I die. It's not a tragic insight that I'm trying to push, but just the fact, no, isn't it?
I don't know what to tell
you. For
you.
you, it's something completely. It doesn't bother you, the fact.
No, now talking about it, it to me now discussing it in a few points, it just seems like one of the things that exist, but okay, we know about them and they have been determined scientifically and whatnot, but they actually, I think, have no bearing to decision making. To me, the more interesting question is, in light of knowing this about the hedonic treadmill, why doesn't it affect our behavior?
Also, you can even say it in that way. Yeah, once you get to know it.
Yeah, why doesn't it?
Yeah, but then we should consider that hedonic treadmill is a concept, and most of the people, even if you would, it is a quite simple concept. It's not a problem. But the fact is that, whether all people ever get to think about something that needs to be put in, is created after certain conceptual effort, and it's not the way that people use language and generally talk in everyday life. So
I mean, even talking about it, is it even something significant in the sense
I mean, I'm really willing to even immediately accept the possibility that it is just the expression of anxiety, that is a general anxiety that might be expressed through this. So if you question the fact, that there is something that connected to anxiety about this inside the hedonic treadmill, maybe.
I think also,
even if it's just a name for the unnamed anxiety, no?
And it's a name to the Buddhist point of attachment, I think also, because I mean why now that we're talking why we have motivation for things, it's because we, I mean, and in my opinion, have this illusion of a persistent self, that there will be a me to enjoy it in the future, But isn't that an illusion, no? Yeah, for me it is. Yeah,
because at that point there will be something else somewhere.
Yeah.
No, but I wouldn't even, I wouldn't even accept that the point of the story, and that and that's the point why, I think this is good. Because precisely, think about it. I mean, on the one hand, because in a sense you say, I'm a person that puts effort not only in things and goals, which you said, but also at, kind of spiritual progress, wisdom, achievement of wisdom, whatever you want to call it. I'm using these words that would be used by Socrates or by someone else of the time. But the point of the story here, is in any way believe that, kind of therapeutic reflection upon your life is something meaningful and something that one should do. I think we agree both on that. And then you say at the same time, but then I'm realizing myself, I'm thinking of the point of truth of all these ideas that I pursue at some future point, which is, and I know it as well, such that when I arrive at it, there will be some other future point at which I will project the moment of truth. and that moment will not be ever reached, and you do still practice things even if you know that, like that, if that's the moment of truth. And I'm willing to defend that it's not. I mean, I'm willing to be proud of the like kind of achievement of wisdom, desire, and part of myself and you, and in general.
But this then brings you like to the question of death, and like even I think like Heidegger and this idea
Also,
of living
yeah.
with death, and like the, what is it, like possibility, not possibility, like
Yeah.
possibility ending all other possibilities, this kind of thing.
Yeah, let's say.
So learning, you don't have this infinite point, and also like I guess
infinite point, which is the what?
No, but because it cancels, there is no
Yeah.
infinite point.
Of
You
the
said
whole,
like in the next point
yeah.
I will be looking
Yeah,
towards
and
the
you
next
will
point.
not, and then you will expect something that will not happen because you will die before.
But I think also, now thinking about it, like this is the scientific. I think it was coined, I thought, the term hedonic treadmill in the 1971. So, and I think most of the studies were like studies on groups of people with different social status and changes that happen to them, and this kind of thing. But I think it's a concept, it's kind of like an emergent property of studying society, like a group of people. So you will see that people with different social statuses, let's say, will have a similar baseline happiness, and that it's a useful maybe concept for discussing this thing between different people, but it's not translatable to one person thinking. It's like horizontal, not vertical, not useful for you thinking during the progress of your life, but useful for thinking horizontally between different people with different lives. I think for this it's maybe useful.
Because
but there
is some equality that you might.
But we can't internalize it and project it linearly along our lifespan, but we can kind of horizontally among society.
It's not at the same point of one's life that there is the treadmill,
I think,
but over the long run, even of the individual life, no?
No, but I like that it's a more useful concept for discussing this than using it in your personal life. But it's for me it's like close to this Buddhist like attachment.
In what sense?
In attachment to desires, attachment to things. So this is the don't do it because you will be running the hedonic treadmill.
Don't attach to desires.
Yeah, of course, like attachment is the cause of all suffering.
All suffering.
Because you will always have unfulfilled desires. But I wanted to bring up another thing, like.
But I mean, I would defend desire also, like I don't
because desire is something that gave us like the moon landing. And
I mean, aren't you all of the made out of the desires at the moment? I mean, you have things that you want to achieve. You identify with that. If somebody told you this will not even happen in the end.
But then, like, again, is it you
or it's meaningless that this happens?
Like you say, you are attached to things. Like, are you a you? Are you a homogeneous? This is then the question: do you believe in a self? Like, are you one consistent self who has different desires?
But believing in self in the sense that not in some abstract sense, in the sense that do you believe that it matters to you that certain things happen along your career path that you really rely upon and want to?
No, but again, it's a you. But like the Buddhist view will deconstruct this into just thoughts appearing in a consciousness. So there is no you.
Yeah, but the point. I agree with you on the. The general idea of deconstructing this and so on, but I'm asking, do we really do it? Are you really in that? I can't say for myself to be in that way detached from like my desires and the objects of my desire even. I mean, come on. If somebody told me all the efforts that I put to achieve things in my life that I try to achieve, external ones in particular, but also the internal ones of myself. If somebody told me, but this is all meaningless, and it won't even happen, no? And then the treadmill is there and whatever else. No, I mean, I would be quite sad to hear, and I'm not disattached from them. I can admit it very openly. Even if at some point and on some level, I absolutely agree with that we should be disattached. I think this is also a position of privilege to be disattached on a certain level from things. In the sense of saying, but it wouldn't matter to me. I would accept it in any way. I'm indifferent. No? Isn't that I'm indifferent to whether it will happen or not. Are you indifferent? That's my question. Like, I can't say I am. Even though I do appreciate the idea and try to achieve it in a certain way. No?
But would you... Yeah.
Are you indifferent, really? I mean, you believe in that, I believe in that. I say, but I'm not indifferent when it comes to big things in my life.
No, of course.
I'm
I mean,
attached fully. I mean, the best part about it is when I'm attached in a good way and I try.
Yeah, I mean, both your behavior and mine in life, of
Are
course,
absolutely proofs of this kind, no?
proves the opposite. Yeah.
That's why I'm asking, and I'm not saying, this is the point of disbelieving in something that we believed before. It's more about going deeper with what we think. It's not the point of questioning in a bad way.
Yeah. Yeah, and one bad thing that this can do, I think, is just like evoke some kind of like cynicism in you that like
some disbelief.
At the bottom line, it all doesn't matter, or this kind of thing.
Indifference, but not disbelief.
But I think, you cannot authentically be, well, the idea, with this detachment from desires, at least on one level, would be to understand them, like, and where they're coming from, for each person personally, not to be in some illusion of
that absolutely to be aware why you wish for things that you wish for. And thinking about that somehow, I think you can get to this concept of you really not being a self, but just a collection of desires that arise from your historical development and circumstances. But it's quite an intellectual disattachment in that sense, no?
But like through meditation, you can remind yourself of it more constantly,
or get it more deeply understood.
Now, like, we're discussing the hedonic treadmill, and in a sense, I don't know why, because like, have we discussed what's the value of it? Like, are we advocating that it's a good thing, bad thing, or
if that's the and that's the, like,
because
the American type of question.
Is it
are we for that or not?
Like,
are you for that?
Utilitarian.
So are you for it or against? No, it's the type of I agree.
It's there, but like
I think we both agree that this exists. That this is true on some level, and they're even relevant, no? And even individually relevant, though, with all the brackets that we put. I think that's where
can we imagine that it doesn't exist?
No, but I would say, first of all, we both kind of do agree that it's not only that it's there and that it's relevant, but that there is an enigma. I mean, when you think about it, it's not a solvable. It's more like a demand for explaining why you believe in life and try to be the person that you are.
I think in a way it's a bad thing in the following sense, because I think discussing it how do I say, formulating like this is a bad thing. Not something I would support for the following reason, because you have this like philosophical movement, the antinatalist or even pro-mortalist position, that it's like an ethically and morally good thing not to bring new humans into existence. And even this is the like antinatalist, that once you're born, there are criteria why your life is worth continuing. But that like ethically and morally, the case is that it's life generally is not worth beginning. This is one position. This is the antinatalist. And there is the pro-mortalist position, which says like, even if we are alive, the net benefit is just to die. So we should all kill ourselves and die the least painful death.
In the end, we don't.
And why is this? Like, the position is that, like, putting it most simply, no matter, like, the goods in life can never outweigh the bad things in life. And this is like the bottom line. And I think this comes somehow from this hedonic treadmill, where like the positive things are discounted because they soon return, but it says nothing of the bad things. What kind of change do they
dismisses like the half of the picture,
and gives somehow space to proclaim that, well, the good things, like the positive effects, they don't have such a big effect, but the bad things, the suffering, this is more important. And however you look, like, the net benefit will be on the side of suffering. So end life, either now or don't begin new life.
And
it's kind of a defeatist position.
I'm completely against. I mean, I think it's full bullshit, really, if I can say.
And in this sense, so like, imagine if it doesn't exist, and what I was thinking about now, like, imagine that there is no hedonic treadmill, or that For us there is, but can we imagine that there isn't? Like, if we could, and now this is the popular thing with like all of the people discussing AI, in the future when we are constructing like artificial intelligence, a consciousness, conscious mind, will we install the hedonic treadmill in it or not?
Oh yeah, I can see that being
like, and what if we don't, and then like maximizing happiness, then if there is good in happiness, then this machine should be allowed to maximize happiness, because it singly, like the single entity, will outweigh all of humanity, because we will never maximize our happiness, and it will always be useful for it to kill us if it's in interest. Imagine installing a software that says, killing humans maximizes your pleasure, and there is no limit, there is no hedonic treadmill.
Yeah, but why wouldn't you make a mind that thinks in that way?
Yeah, but will you install in the code hedonic treadmill, like reset to this every 5 years, like to baseline happiness?
Will there be like, how will happiness be like? I think that
it will be input output.
Implies a sensory apparatus. I don't think we want
even a moral apparatus. Like
I don't think we can. We are still thinking about AI in the sense of installing all of that in it, or people are already, or Elon Musk thinks so. No.
Yeah, I think Sam Harris.
He's full on.
Sam Harris would have like a word or two to say about this. Like we're
but they will have,
or like start thinking about it now and lay the groundwork for the future, whatever.
No, that's nice. I mean, I agree.
But okay, can we imagine not having the hedonic treadmill? Can we imagine an entity, an alien coming to Earth who is constantly through his 100-year lifespan?
I think it's like two questions at the same. One is like, so you have this being not in the treadmill, but still with all the other relevant elements of the human experience, because that's the only relevant for me. I mean. Okay. Maybe also there will be one, but it will so be unlike humans that in general to think about it is like it not being under the treadmill is even doesn't make sense, because we can't even depict it really in how it would be so different than humans. But if it would be not having the hedonic treadmill and being similar to other humans, like to us, that means that it would be, and that's the relevant sense of the hedonic treadmill for me, is like, okay, so it would be the being that also strives for things that we strive for, but would in the end be able to achieve striving for these things. So first I would ask, striving for things in the sense of, like eating 10 candies and not getting less like happiness out of the new candy. So would that be a being that just like starts eating candy until it goes crazy because it's just, maximizing the momentarily amount of happiness? Or would it be like a being that maximizes the amount of happiness in some other way? And we come back to the questions that we already had about the individual and the social and so on. So I think that's another like unspecified part, but I still think it's interesting to think. But
again, in this thing now that you're saying, you are again looking at the vertical line and not having the hedonic treadmill. Imagine not having the hedonic treadmill on the horizontal line. So you have like this upper class. Yeah, like, so you have this upper class, the 1%, who is like, constant orgasms every day because they're so happy. And you have...
So that would imply that it's the non-existence of hedonic treadmill along the lines of the consumer, of the even money
but
spent.
Like these people, the 1%, they have education, they have families, they are achieving these things, and they are objectively really like 1,000 times happier in their lives than the other 99. And you have this like
I think first it's interesting to see whether it would be them that they are the most happy, if there was no treadmill, in the sense of, because the question is on what level would the,
and okay, would this...
But you can, but let's assume that it's about the amount
and it's assumption that the society of these people would even lead to inequality.
For me, it's
or whatever.
Always difficult to talk about this world because we are talking about something that we have to kind of try to define precisely.
And
I find our word complex enough. No.
Now trying to talk about this thing, like we are talking about the hedonic trend in like 35 minutes, and it's not a useful concept. It turns out that
it has some problems. I agree. I wouldn't say that it's completely not useful when we think about our daily life. And to kind of prove that, I would say it's just something that comes up. Check whether it will come up in your like life after this this idea of
Yeah, and of
always
course,
being
of
on
course.
this how do you call it, the child's thing, where you have two children like going up and down on the thing, and it's like you're
Okay.
up and then you're down and then you're up and then you're down, and this is all there is to it. No, I mean, I don't want to sound scary at all, but it's.
But then, like, yeah, then we're not talking about the like treadmill and always returning. But
I mean, like in the sense that Kundera talks about it, when he talks about the finding the happiness in little things, when he says, yeah, so because of existence of this thing, in the end, the point is like to find enjoyment, pleasure, meaning, however you want to define it, in little things, no? And not lead the life of the big things, but of the little things. I mean, and this is the sense that, yeah.
Yeah. No, okay, I understand what you're saying, but
That's the level I wonder about. If you get me. I mean, of course, the conversation doesn't need to end with the answer, but it's more like,
yeah,
pondering on the meaning of the thing.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know, maybe like the most pragmatic use for it would be like in, helping you not to envy people and, this kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a cautionary tale, no?
Yeah.
It's a good cautionary tale. And it's good to have in mind, at least for the people that believe in cautionary tales like you and me, no?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's a good cautionary tale, however one thinks about it, I mean.
But I don't know, like even... Can we apply...
I'm certainly against this concept as something when we talk about, equality and saying, okay, so if there is hedonic treadmill universally, everybody is in the end equally happy and no one should be better off than they are at this point.
Are the proponents of like this theory, is anyone implying that like, okay, throughout one person's life, throughout horizontally across society, but that there is this baseline happiness historically? Can you argue that? Because like think about like living in a time with surgery with no anesthesia. Can you imagine that? Like imagine having surgery
but then you would say there is like a full-on progress in terms of
like did those people like living and going through surgery like just say those words?
Don't they suffer in other ways nowadays that they didn't at the time of when there was no surgery? Or they suffer less?
For me, this is also very crazy.
Yeah, then you would question even the civilizing capacity of capitalism, not the fact that that at least there is universal healthcare and some things at some points in capitalism.
Not in all countries.
Not in all countries in all times, but in some countries in some times. Yeah, precisely. And that's this, and that's precisely not the point of the story. I mean, to say, to kind of use this as this postmodernist argument that completely, like, raises doubt about everything insofar that you can't even talk about
postmodern neo-Marxist.
Absolutely not that. Yeah, that's not the point. Yeah, I don't want to defend myself here, but the point I mean is just the maybe this personal and also affectual level of the whole thing. Maybe that I have that others don't, but then I think
it goes a lot.
Like, for example, remember like the thing, I mean, if you know it, but it's fun, really, to me, like there is the point where Socrates like talks about whether like you could consider some of the people that he knows as like eudaimon, which means basically the people that that basically not only live a good life in the sense of being right and doing according to the ideal of the citizen in the Greek society at the moment, but also like after their death, you can't say for people that didn't die whether they're eudaimons, whether they achieved this, because only once they die and also their children's lives are somewhat already clear in the sense that they realize themselves in a certain way, you could say that they are eudaimons. And I think this connects, no?
But then, like the hedonic treadmill, at that point has no relevance to you when you're dead.
And for him, this is the
hedonic treadmill is a purely subjective thing. So I think it's pointless talking about somebody being
No,
on
no,
a
and he says, and this is, I mean, and then it's, at the same time it seems pointless to us, but at the same time it's the way that they talk. I mean, they talk about, they consider this precisely this idea when they talk about what they should do with their own lives. I mean, they consider the idea of eudaimon when Socrates talks to Cephalus and the other guys in the dialogue. I mean, in the Republic. That's the.
So, like for me, I think closing vision I have of this is that it is very much related to the strength of your perception of self, and precisely because of this delay of gratification and delaying it for someone that you imagine to be you in the future, and that deconstructing your idea of the self and breaking this kind of illusion will also in some way radically change the concept of the hedonic treadmill once you think about it in different terms of you just being a collection of thought at every instant in time.
Yeah.
In that way, like the desires have a completely different meaning.
Yeah.
Because if you are just a temporary collection of thoughts and processes in your brain, and that there is no self, that there is no thinker of thoughts, that thoughts are not happening to you, there is no there are just the thoughts, and you are the emergent property, you are just another thought, like a meta thought in this sense.
Yeah.
Then the hedonic treadmill is just at every instant in time, this collection of thoughts calibrating its surroundings and setting the baseline happiness in this proportion.
Yeah.
And so, but that, in looking at it like that, then whether you should achieve some things for me is then a completely separate question that has nothing to do with this.
And I'm always pushing for this. I mean, maybe it's just the thing that I want to talk more with you always, but in general, I think both things are interesting. And I think in this other way, there is no point of discussing it even too much, the hedonic treadmill. It's like too inconsistent, even contradictory, so many questions open about the concept to define it precisely to really be useful for thinking. I agree completely. I just kind of think of this internal question, if I understood, which you also...
No, but I think you are also maybe thinking about it as in what sense is it integrated with this kind of consumer capitalism, and how much is it also contributing to
but also effects? in our own daily lives, as something that you can perceive to be the objective objective property of your your experience. I mean, and one that you sometimes maybe even contradict in your conscious rationalization of your life, no? And I'm not saying it's good, the rationalization, and I agree with the whole Buddhist thing completely in that sense. But it's something that we do, no? This rationalization is something that we do every day and that we are quite attached to, no? And that's okay. And I'm even proud of those.
Yeah, but think a little bit it makes sense to have hedonic treadmill because look at it from an evolutionary perspective, in this proto human who is just eating and procreating. Without the hedonic treadmill, we would go extinct because we would have one meal.
No, for sure.
And never get the drive for the other one because our baseline happiness wouldn't reset, and so a tiger would eat you tomorrow because you would be just laying there
sure.
happy.
If you
and then if you're living like this kind of an animal in the wild, okay, and you're just always jumping up and down and resetting. It makes perfect sense to have the hedonic treadmill because you are always on this baseline, which is the same. But then, we now, as an advanced society, we now have all these other things to achieve.
Precisely.
And they are not integrated with this.
Precisely as you said. And we live in a society that is kind of commonly believing that there is no treadmill, no?
Yeah.
And that's quite strange, no? This deep contradiction and kind of erasure that happens in our culture, no?
Yeah. So these were,
and that could be a talk one day, no? The culture, living in the culture where we deny the simple fact of hedonic treadmill.
No. I'm happy with the conversation. I think I think we can draw it to a close because I want to be, you know, cautious of your time. It's
And
now
of your
11
own.
o'clock, and it's
Yeah.
actually your birthday in 1 hour, so we're
Yeah,
gonna
that's true.
wrap it up for this one. And yeah, I enjoyed this one very much.
Me
I
too.
can say.
Let's see
I
how
can
it
say,
sounds. Yeah.
yeah, I can say right away. So it will be continued definitely. And you know, thank you everyone for listening.
Thanks, guys.